Well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to wait just a minute or two. We're still admitting people in here, and we'll get started here at like 11:02, 11:03, around there. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us here this morning. We appreciate you being here. I hope that you're getting some good information that you are able to utilize in your classrooms here this year. So at the last session, Stephanie talked mostly about animal ag, and so I'm going to focus more on crops here in this session and talk a little bit about the diversity of the crops that we grow across the country and why we do that. I'm also going to touch on a book that Kevin brought up in his first session today, this Hungry Planet book. So I'm going to talk about that and really focus in on some lesson ideas and some things that you can do with that book. That's a book that we use a lot and we really like, and so I want to kind of give you some insight into that book as well. All right, so I'm going to start off by doing some things that are a little bit interactive. So I'm going to ask you to use the chat feature here. So I'm going to start with the 2017 Census Ag Atlas maps. And so these are really cool maps that show where crops are grown in different parts of the country. And she'll give you kind of an idea of where our food is actually coming from. Because as I think many of us know, we don't grow, Illinois, for instance, isn't a major producer all the different things that we eat, right? It's a major producer of certain crops, just like other parts of the country are major producers of certain crops, certain vegetables, certain things that we eat because of a variety of reasons, right? Because of their geography, because of the unique climate in that area, and in some cases because of unique cultures in those areas too. Those crops have preference over others, and so there's lots of reasons that go into this, and so we're going to talk about a few of those here today. I can tell you from firsthand, as somebody who grows and sells salad mix and lettuce in central Illinois throughout the month of July, lettuce does not want to grow in Illinois in July, right? There's ways you can do it, but there's a reason that there's not a ton of people trying to do that, because it's really hard to do. And so that's why a lot of these different areas of our country have certain crops that have been prioritized, because there's lots of factors that go into that to make that crop more efficient there or grow better there. Okay. So I'm going to click on my first map here. And so you can see here on this map, every dot represents 10,000 acres. And so if you would go to the chat feature, and I'm trying to give you a softball here for the first one, put your guess on what crop you think is represented by all those dots. All right. Yep, we got you basically, there were two that were going to be pretty good chances there. Yeah, it looks like we all got it. All right, that is corn. All right, excellent. Okay, let's go to our next one here. This one might be a little bit harder. All right, what crop do you think is represented by these dots, which in this case, each dot represents 3,000 acres? All right, we got some good guesses here. The correct answer is rice. All right, so if we think about, okay, why is rice grown specifically in that part of the country? Well, a lot of the reason here is the Mississippi River, right? Rice needs to be, those fields need to be flooded, is how most people grow rice, and so they need access to large quantities of water in order to create those rice paddies to flood their fields. You may not know, we actually have some rice producers here in Illinois, in the very southern tip of Illinois. They grow some rice, and I actually had some last night from a farm called Cahokia Rice. And I follow them on Instagram and on Facebook, and they post some pretty interesting videos of it. It's farming. They use a lot of the same equipment, like the equipment that Taylor talked about in our last session. They use some equipment that looks familiar, but they grow things in very, very different ways. And so one of the things they posted a while back, they flooded their fields and they create this new ecosystem within their field when it's flooded. And they were walking through and there was just snakes everywhere. And so not something you normally think about as you're walking through your field, but certainly something, evidently when you grow rice, that's something that you think about there. All right, so good guesses there. That's rice. All right, how about this one right here? What do you think those dots again, that represents 10,000 acres. What do you think those dots represent? What crop is being grown there? All right, we got some all-stars here. All right, yeah, that crop is wheat there, okay? This is called the breadbasket of the United States because so much wheat is grown there. All right, how about here? We've got one dot equals 500 acres. So they're scattered out a little bit more in some diverse areas of the country. All right, nice job here, guys. Yeah, that's apples. And so it's a little bit misleading since one dot is so many acres. You know, we have tons of apple producers here in Illinois. We're not a major producer compared like to say Washington, for instance, but we grow a number of apples here. We have a lot of apple orchards here. They're just not necessarily in the size, that scale that they would necessitate having a dot on this map. But it does, you know, even though it's a little bit misleading, it looks like we don't grow apples anywhere else. It gives you a pretty good idea of where the majority of them are grown, right? And so, you know, I like these maps because this is a cool way to have students look at the country in a different way, right? And look at our geography and our climate in our country in a different way, especially when you think about, you know, apples that we're eating right now were harvested, you know, perhaps over here on the West Coast last September or last October, and they've been held in cold storage for almost an entire year, and we're eating apples that were from last fall. I think a lot of students and a lot of adults too don't necessarily understand that part of the process and don't necessarily understand the transportation and the infrastructure and all the things that go into getting those apples to us after the farmer has done their part as well. So again, these maps would be a really cool way to introduce students to that, to just see geographically where this stuff comes from. All right, so I wanted to focus a little bit here on some Illinois grown products and give you a little bit of insight into why we grow certain things that we grow in our state. So obviously when you think about Illinois agriculture, what a lot of people are going to think about is corn and soybeans, and rightfully so, right? So there's a few different reasons for why corn and soybeans are such dominant crops here in Illinois. And most importantly, it'd be the geography and the climate, right? We've got a lot of flat prairie land, you know, very easy to farm on as far as using equipment and, you know, not having a lot of hills that can erode. There's lots of great flat land. We've also got really, really good soil. So Kevin talked about this a couple weeks ago in his history presentation, but we actually have an Illinois state soil. It's called drummer soil. And I've got a link here for a state soil guide that's really good for both teachers and students. It kind of goes through and explains what this drummer soil is. This is basically the black dirt that you associate with parts of Illinois, not in the entire state, but particularly the northern and central part of the state. This is drummer soil. So this is formed by the decaying prairie grasses and things over the years. And so this is really good black dirt, high in organic matter. That's very good for growing corn and soybeans. So that's one aspect of why these crops have become such big producers in our state. But also, if you think about our transportation capabilities in Illinois are different than in other states as well. So particularly, I wanted to draw your attention to our lock and dam system. And so if you think about between Lake Michigan, the Illinois River, and the Mississippi River, we have this amazing river transportation system that, again, a lot of states don't have access to. And so I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of it, but it's pretty fascinating when you really do a deep dive into how many of our products, and not just ag products, but lots of products are transported on our rivers through these lock and dam systems. And it's been in the news quite a bit the last few years, but in case you're not familiar with it, they've been in disrepair for years now. So a lot of these locks and dams were built in the 30s. They were intended to last 50 years. Obviously, we're a lot past that now. And so there's been a big push to find ways to rehab these locks and dams and make them safer and make them more efficient to transport these goods, because the alternative is having thousands and thousands more semi-trailers on our interstates, right? And so it's a lot more efficient, it's a lot better for the environment to haul things down these rivers, and so we've needed to invest in these for a long time. So I've got two resources here that would be good to, if you wanted to incorporate any of this kind of stuff into your classroom. So there's a short documentary here. It's just a 10-minute look at the locks and dams, and it focuses on one particular lock and dam in Illinois and takes you through it and shows you how bad the condition is for it and what happens when equipment fails and they have to shut the lock and dam down, how the river backs up and how it's really can be a dangerous situation. That video was made in 2016 by the National Soybean Board. Since then, this year actually, they have started working on some of the locks and dams in Illinois, including the one referenced in that documentary. And so here I've got a series of articles that were put out by Farm Week, which is a Farm Bureau publication that we talked about on Tuesday with Charlie. He likes the classified ads in the Farm Week. They also do some other reporting as well. And so they've got a number of different articles from the past year that talk about construction updates that are going on with the locks and dams, with the goal being that they're going to be rehabilitated and reopened by harvest season so that we can start to transport crops down the river once again for our grain exports. So again, thinking about Illinois grown, it's not just a random thing that we just happen to grow corn and soybeans here. There's a lot of different factors that go into making our state ideal to be able to do that. If we look at another crop, pumpkins, I talked about pumpkins a couple weeks ago in one of my sessions. We've got, again, a great geography, a great climate to be able to grow large quantities of pumpkins, but also another aspect that goes with that is that we've had investment in the processing industry. And so around Morton and Peoria area and those counties around that area of our state, we have one of the largest pumpkin processors in the world right there. And so that's why so many farms grow pumpkins in that area, because there's a market right there for it. And so again, when you think about talking to students about why certain things are grown the way they are, grown where they are, there's lots of different factors beyond just what seems like the most important ones, like climate or geography or things like that, to actually grow it. But it also takes some other factors in there as well to make sure that farmers are actually able to sell these things. Another crop that Illinois is a leader in is horseradish. And so we're the #1 pumpkin producer, which I think a lot of people don't realize. We're also the #1 producer of horseradish. Again, not a huge crop, right? Not something that's on the same level as, say, corn or soybeans, but Illinois produces the lion's share of horseradish for the country and for the world. And so, again, if we look at geography and climate, the Mississippi River Basin has soil that is rich in potash, and so it's perfect nutrients needed to grow horseradish. Collinsville, Illinois is actually called the horseradish capital of the world. They have a big festival every year. I've got a link here when I post this presentation online. I've got a link here to show you that's about the history in Collinsville and how horseradish is such an important crop down there. Horseradish is interesting because not only is there perfect soil in this area of the state to grow it, but also if you look at from a cultural aspect, so German immigrants who immigrated here in the late 1800s brought this tradition of growing horseradish to that area of the state, and they passed that down generation by generation. And so that's also a contributing factor to why this crop is so prevalent in that area, because of this cultural aspect as well. It's not, I think there's certain pockets of the population that like horseradish. I'm not one of them. My grandpa, we still have the family farmstead in the family, and there's a patch of horseradish that he tended for probably 70, 80 years of his life. And can't say that it's a spot I go to very often, but again, my family had this German immigrant heritage, and so I wonder if that's kind of where that tradition was passed on to him as well here. So again, lots of factors that go into these crops, and horseradish is a good example of the cultural aspect that comes with that as well. All right, so now that we've looked at some crops and where they're grown in different parts of the country and different part of the state, I want to talk a little bit more about this book, Hungry Planet. And so, as you can see, this is a big book. Here, I'm going to stop my share here just for a second. So this is a big book. It's a beautiful book. It's got nice, huge pictures in it. There's lots of great text if you have older groups of students who could read the content. A lot of the lessons that we promote with Hungry Planet is actually just using the pictures. And so I'm going to actually reshare, and I'm going to go to the author's website. Let's see here. Okay, so basically, Peter Menzel, the photographer and author of this book, his goal was to go around the world and show what the world eats. And so he didn't really have an agenda beyond that. He just wanted to give a representation of here's what's happening at this point in time, of how these people in all these different regions, cultures, countries of the world, what they're actually eating. He did not try to find like the average person necessarily in these countries. He just found a diverse group of people around the world and used them as a case study of, hey, here's what these people are eating basically. And so there's dozens and dozens of pictures as you go through it. I wanted to highlight a couple just to kind of show ways that you could talk about this with your students, because I think, and I can't tell you how many conversations I had with students about, how there's this tendency to think that what we eat or what we wear or what we like is normal, and what other people like or other people eat, well, that's just weird. And I think breaking that down and kind of showing them that it might be normal for us, but there's such this beautiful diversity around the world that we need to embrace that and say that's great. It's not what I do, but it's different, and that's okay, and we want to celebrate that. And so if we can do that through food and through agriculture, that's even better, right? We can promote both things at the same time here. So I'm going to click on this picture here. So this is a family in rural China. Now I was going to do kind of more of an interactive thing with this, but I think in the interest of time, I'm just going to kind of walk through it with you. And so if we look at this family in rural China, you can see the first thing that I notice is it looks like it's mostly fresh fruits and vegetables, right? And so if you think about, and maybe I didn't explain too, the idea with these pictures is that the author bought them a week's worth of food and said, I'll buy you a week's worth of food if you'll let me take your picture with all the food and with your family. And so the idea is to represent this is actually what they would have consumed in the following week. So if I look at this family in rural China, I can see lots of fruits and vegetables here. But if I skip I'm going to skip to this family. This family is in, I believe, in the Beijing area, and you can see of China, and you can see very different tablescape of the food that they're eating, right? So even in the same country, there's this rich diversity, and depending on what area of China, in this case, they're eating very different things. I think we could probably say the same thing for parts of the US as well, right? If I go, let me see if I can find it on here. Tell you what, let me back out of this. It'll be easier for me to find. So there's one in Greenland that I think is particularly interesting. All right, right here. All right, so this family, if you look at their food, it looks like, maybe, at first glance, not too dissimilar from what maybe you or I are eating, right? So looks like lots of packaged things, processed things. This family lives 500 miles from the nearest city, and they have to travel by dog sled to get there. And so their food needs to be processed in ways to make it last longer. It's not a convenience thing necessarily. It's that they need it to be that way so that they can have food for an extended period of time. They also talk about one of the daughters, one of them, their favorite food is polar bear meat, and the other is narwhal skin. So again, things that us or our students might at first glance think, oh, that's weird to be eating that. We need to not take that for granted so much, that there's this diversity of what people eat around the world, and we need to open our eyes to that a little bit more. Again, this book's a really good way to do that. All right, the last one I'll show you from here, just as a comparison here, I'll show you one of the American ones. All right, so here's American Family they highlight. And again, this book does a really nice way of, this obviously we've got a lot of processed food. They're clearly going and getting pizza, but they also talk about in the story about this family that they're a super active family. They're involved in all these different sports and activities, and what they eat is kind of dictated by their busy schedule. And so they get more convenience food because they're doing so many active things in their lives. And so diet is so intrinsically connected to culture and to society in ways that I think we don't always appreciate. And so this is a great book to be able to kind of highlight that with students and show them ways to better understand why we eat what we eat, but also why people eat what they eat all around the world. The other nice thing about this book is it's not, in addition to the pictures of the families with their food, there's all sorts of other pictures in here as well that just show these rich cultures around the world and give a better idea into how people are living around the world. And so can't say enough good things about this book. Hungry Planet, highly recommend it. We do an activity where we actually have taken pictures. We've kind of chosen certain countries. We've taken the pictures and laminated them and passed them out and just used it as a discussion starter to talk about what people notice about these diets and these cultures. And it's a really good place to start talking about some of that diversity. All right, I'm going to go back to my presentation here. All right, so that's Hungry Planet. Again, can't say enough good things about that. Some other resources to talk about, to talk to students about food and diet and those links with culture. There's another book, and I've got a link to the time.com article that has many of the pictures from the book. So this is called What Kids Eat Around the World. Again, stunning photographs. So they take kids and they take a collection of what they ate for lunch that week and kind of artfully arrange it around them. I like this because they also are highlighting other things about their lives. And so a lot of them have like hobbies or things that the kids enjoy doing. They incorporate those. And then also just the diversity of clothing and all sorts of things they incorporate into these pictures. So again, a really cool way to show students how diverse the world is in regards to food and agriculture and how those are tied in with culture as well. So there's a link there to that. If you just Google what kids eat around the world, that will get you to that article as well. All right, another video that I'm not going to show you this, but I have a link to it here. It's called School Lunches Around the World. It's short. It's just a little over a minute long, but it shows you, takes you through major countries around the world and shows students, hey, here's what schools are serving for lunch, to show students, again, the diversity there. If you want to look at this from a more of a historical standpoint and talk to kids about how our diets and our food has changed over the course of years, Epicurious has this series called Kids Try, and most of the ones that I've seen, they try things from over a 100-year period. So they try to recreate foods that were popular or prevalent in these different time periods, and they just blindly give them to kids and have them try it and see what they think of it. So I'm going to show you this one. It's just a couple minutes long, and I think my guess is I definitely can see some of my former students and some of these kids, and so I'm assuming you'll notice that too here. So we'll watch this quick Kids Try video. This is brown bag lunches from the past 100 years.
Nobody eats this. I eat what's trending. Looks gross.
That's terrible.
Why would you bring this?
I feel so bad for my parents that they had to live like this.
It's pretty good. It tastes like sadness. I think it's how they made hamburgers back then. When I first looked at this, I thought it was an egg McMuffin. That's gross and kind of good at the same time. I don't like it.
This is what people ate in the 1920s.
That's old. Isn't there supposed to be a sandwich?
That's really good. Is that spam?
Eat it. Oh, God.
I would rather jump off a bridge than eat this.
I don't like this. I feel like I'm trying something new and I'm liking it.
If your mom packed this lunch for you, what would you say?
Thank you for the effort, but I'm not really into this kind of thing. This is a better lunch than I usually have. Even better than the cafeteria. Cafeteria lunch is cheap. It's definitely not a sandwich. Ew. It's actually not too bad.
What decade do you think this is?
2016.
The 1970s.
What? Soda was back then? What's Tab?
It tastes like Pepsi or Coke or both.
I know what I'm eating first. Pepperoni pizza. Tastes like a unicorn threw up a rainbow. Yeah. This is good, but I wouldn't have the cheese in it.
Sorry, guys.
This lunch together is actually very good. It's really soggy and it's leaking. It'll probably drip all over the place, making the lunch ladies mad. There's a little bit of junk food missing from this lunch. Nobody eats this.
All right. My favorite lines there are, I eat what's trending and it tastes like sadness. So that's some pretty brutal child honesty there. So again, kind of, these videos don't necessarily go into the historical implications of what people were eating, but I think it opens the door for us to talk more about that. And so there's lots of different connections that we can make. Again, there's dozens of these kids try videos out there. And so a good entry point into talking about food, and then as a gateway to talk more about farming and agriculture as well. Okay, so let me go back to my presentation here. All right, I am getting ready.
I eat what.
All right, I'm getting ready to turn it over to our Ag in the Classroom intern, Hannah Spangler, and she has made this pretty incredible book of lessons. And I'm going to let her kind of talk to you more about it, but I think this will be a really good resource and maybe even more relevant in this upcoming school year than in other years as well. So I'm going to turn it over to her. She'll talk to you for a while, and then I'll kind of end things here. If you've got questions for me as she's presenting, please put those in the chat box, and I will try to look at those as she's presenting. All right, Hannah, if you want to unmute, I'll let you take over here.
Okay, give me just a second to share my screen. And go full. Can you see it?
Yep, it's not full screen yet, but yep, now you're getting there. Yep,
Awesome.
perfect.
Okay, So, hi everybody. Like Chris said, this summer I have been the Ag in the Classroom intern. And so I've gotten to do a lot of fun projects with social media and redesigning their old lesson plans. But my biggest project this summer has been this lesson packet that I've been making. And it is called Ag Lessons for High School Students to Teach Elementary Students. And so I will go a little more in the details later in the presentation, but just kind of in short, it's meant specifically for ag students like FFA members or 4-H members that want to get more involved with their elementary schools to just go in and provide extra resources to kids and give them something fun to do while learning about agriculture. Next slide. So a little bit about me. Like I said, I am the Ag in the Classroom intern for this summer. I grew up with a 4-H and FFA background. This top picture is actually me, my sophomore year of high school. And that was my first year that I taught after school ag club at my local elementary school. And so this is really where I got interested in this kind of thing and interested in ag in the classroom. It was probably from that stage in my life where I had like my mind set on actually having this internship. So it just taught me a lot of things about teaching, and I think is what inspired me to do this project this summer. Then down here, I'm at a sheep show on the right. I showed sheep from the age of 8 to the age of 18. So that's my big ag background. And then right now, I'm going to be a junior at the University of Illinois, where I am studying agriculture education. And I don't know if I want to teach high school ag. That's what I'll be certified for when I graduate. But I really like kids, so we'll see where I go from here. Okay, going into the lessons themselves, I had 4 goals that I really wanted to cover whenever I made these lessons, and that was encouragement, adaptability, engagement, education, and then just kind of overall something that was going to be a quality experience for kids that were learning and a good teaching learning experience for the kids that were teaching. And so that first pillar is encouragement. Lessons that encourage students to start or continue teaching ag in their local elementary schools. For me, when I was first starting, all those resources were out there, but I didn't know how to find them. I didn't know how to make the lesson something that I could teach. And so I wanted to kind of break down those barriers for high school students. And so this is a specific lesson that's just for them, or not just for them, but something that's specific to them. And so then they don't have those barriers of, what do I have to do? Like, I'm scared because I don't know how to find these resources. And so that was my goal for that. And then the next pillar is adaptability. Lessons that can be easily changed to make different accommodations. A lot of times I found that I had this idea that I wanted to teach K through 5 the same thing. Oh, sorry. Can you still see my screen?
Yep, you're still good, Hannah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I had like a notification and it went crazy. Adaptability. A lot of times it's hard to find the time as a high school student to plan these lessons. And if you have a lesson you like for younger kids, like how do you find the time to also plan it for older kids? And so these lessons will have like a focus group of like, this lesson is for K through 2. But then I also gave them tips of how can you adapt this so you can use the same lesson to teach 3rd through 5th graders. And then the next part was engagement. Lessons that have different activities to keep students involved and engaged. You guys know as educators, especially if you have a long school day, it can be really hard to get kids to pay attention and to learn, especially during a food activity when they're all hyped up on sugar. And so I wanted to create engagement lessons that have a variety of activities. So kids are getting up and moving throughout the lesson, or they are getting to do a hands-on activity during the lesson. Because especially as a high school student, when you're not trained on how to work with kids, to keep them paying attention the whole time, I wanted to create some activities that would get them so excited that they wouldn't be worrying about everything else. And then finally, education, lessons that teach actions how to teach while teaching students about the agriculture industry. That was kind of like the biggest piece of it. I grew up in kind of a small town, but still was surprised by how many kids just didn't know anything about agriculture. And so that was my main goal in this, is just giving kids the opportunity to learn about agriculture, so that they can grow up and become more informed consumers, and then be able to teach their own elementary students about ag in the future. So, and you'll notice I have some pictures from when I was in FFA and my cousin as well. So those are just to look at as we go through this. So this is the cover of my, sorry, keep getting notifications, of my lesson booklet. I wanted to really highlight kind of the ag connection of FFA and 4-H. And then this is the table of contents. So I have one lesson for every month. And I decided to do this because Ag in the Classroom has been doing kind of a national day campaign. And so I wanted to kind of tie in those national days with these lessons. And also I figured tying it in with like a national day, something that's happening in the world or has happened that month, would help kids connect these lessons to something else that's happening in the world as well. So for example, in August 2007, the Gold Rush apple became our official state fruit. And so August is all about apples. Or October is a big pumpkin month, so they can make pumpkin patch pie. February 15th is National Gumdrop Day. So February is make your own gumdrops. And there's even an Earth Day lesson in April. And so this is my sample lesson. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys this video, and then I'll show you guys the lesson itself. Chris, do I have to stop share and reshare to show a video?
It looks like, try it. Did you select to share with audio when you shared?
I'm not sure.
In the bottom left, there should be a little button to push that says share with computer audio.
Okay, I'm in computer audio. Okay, sorry guys.
No, you're fine.
Oops. Share. Sorry, like, it's freaking out. Okay. Now the mic is good. Okay, can you see the video?
Yep, you should be all good.
Perfect. Thanks for being patient. First, we're going to dump in your ingredients, which in this case is just the 2 teaspoons of Jello powder and the 1/8 teaspoon of water. Next, we're going to mix the water and the Jello together with your finger. If you want a more appetizing color, you may not want to use red, but that's all I had on. You're going to mix together with your finger till you have a nice little clump, and then you're going to roll that clump into sugar until it forms a nice little ball. Then you have your homemade gumdrops.
As for the homemade gumdrops, you can pass out the store-bought ones. Then with younger kids, you can talk about the differences between the two. And then for the older kids, there is even a worksheet so that they can compare and contrast and write down which one they liked the best.
So that is just a short little video of the gumdrop lesson. And now I'm going to go ahead and pull up the actual lesson for you guys so you can see it. So this is the first page of this lesson. And as you can see right away, kids are able to see this is a science lesson and a literacy lesson where they get to do some writing and some critical thinking. And then one thing I added to this is these little banner star things down here. And so this kind of points out some key components of the lesson right away. And so, for example, this is an individual activity. And so all of the activities like this one that have the pink individual activity means it's not a team. So this is a project that just one kid is doing. Each kid has their own. And then this one is also a food lesson. And so they know right away that they're going to be making something that they can eat. And then this shows the grade focus level. So it's just K through 2 for the specific lesson. And then the lesson is about an hour. And then also I wanted to have something that would let them know what they need to have done before lesson day. And so I have the before the lesson day and then what they do at the start, even like an icebreaker so they can get to know their students right away. And then of course the main activity. And then the biggest thing to note is down here I have which do you like best. And so at the end of the activity, if you heard in the video, the student would pass out some store-bought gumdrops as well, and then have a conversation about the store-bought gumdrops and then other foods that are made with corn-based sweeteners. And then you can go into this T-chart, and on a piece of paper for the younger kids, you can kind of compare and contrast the gumdrops that they made and then the store-bought gumdrops. And that gives kind of a little conversation about how do we tell if things are the same? How is this different? How is this similar? And then for 3rd through 5th graders, there's actually a worksheet where they can write down what they liked best and why. And so these are the additional resources, how to adapt it for 3rd through 5th grader. It's still the same activity, just with a couple differences. And then my favorite part is the Ag Kid connection. And so this really drives home how you can connect older youth in agriculture with younger youth in agriculture. And so for FFA, we have a food science CDE where we learn all about the science behind food. Well, that's self-explanatory. But so it's record a short video of yourself or a fellow FFA member talking about the contest. And then for 4-H, do you have someone in your club that makes candy, or do you know someone that's been to a sugarcane farm? And so you can record a video of a 4-H member giving a talk and share that with the students as well. And then last, I have what the other Ag in the Classroom candy lessons are. So if you love the idea of teaching about candy, but maybe don't want to do this activity, or you already did this activity before, I've listed all these other activities that they can find through Ag in the Classroom as well. And then here's the compare and contrast worksheet. So they can write down the similarities and the differences, and then finally share which one they liked the best. And scroll to the top here. Sorry, it's a very long booklet with all the lessons for every month. The other thing is the standards. So if you too want to use some of these lessons in your classroom, I've also listed all of the standards that all of the lessons cover, so that you know that it's hitting a lot of those Common Core science, math, and language arts standards. Let me go back to present. Okay. That is all for me. I'd love to answer any questions if you guys have them though. But if you think of any questions after this. My email is down here. Also, if you have any like high school students that you know in your area that you think would be interested in, and they have questions as well, feel free to have them reach out to me and all of this. And finally, just thank you guys so much for listening to me talk today. I really hope that these lessons will be really useful, not just for high school students, but to get more ag in the classroom to elementary kids. We don't really know what the rest of this semester or what next semester will look like, but we're hoping that at least some people from the same district can come in and give kids more agriculture experiences so that they can be educated about the agricultural world around them.
All right, thank you so much, Hannah. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about the work that she's done on this. I think it's going to be a really, really good resource. I don't think that I probably could have come up with this even my first year teaching, let alone if I hadn't even taught yet. I think she's done just a really great job with it. So somebody asked if we're going to post that on the blog site. Yes, it will be linked with this presentation, and then we'll also eventually get it up on our other website as well, and it'll be widely released with that too. So yeah, thank you, Hannah. Hannah, if you want to stop sharing, and then I'm going to take over again here. All right, so we're about out of time here. All right. All right. I had one final thing I was going to talk about, but I want to respect your guys' time. So I'm going to post it on the blog site with the other notes from this session. I did a short presentation on some connections with agriculture and medicine. And so I talk a little bit about how corn goes into making penicillin. That was actually a process that was started in Peoria, Illinois. I talk about how chicken eggs are used to make flu vaccine. And then also there's current research going on with cows and antibodies in fighting COVID to create antibodies for humans to use to fight COVID. And so there's lots of really cool connections with agriculture and medicine as well. I'll post that on there, and then at some point, maybe we'll incorporate that into another training at some point too, but I'll give that information to you, particularly if you have some science connections there. That might be a good thing to share as well. All right, last thing I'll say is this is our final morning session. Please fill out reflections. We will get you sent your certificates of completion within a week. If you can get those reflections filled out, I mean, if you've got a break right now, if you want to fill those out real quick while you're thinking about it, great. We're going to start sending those out next Tuesday. And so we will shut those reflections down and start creating the certificate. So if you can please fill those out prior to next Tuesday to help us out, and we will get those out to you in a timely manner. If you're interested in our fall PD in your PJs, I've got a link for that here. We'll also be promoting that on our social media and other places coming up soon, so you have plenty of chances to sign up for that. We've got a lot of really cool stuff coming out this fall, and we're trying to be nimble and quick and be able to adapt depending on what happens with schools. And so we've got lots of good stuff. Kevin talked about our field trips earlier, our author visits, and we're going to have weekly lessons coming out similar to Hannah's book that are going to be themed around what's going on in each month. So for instance, September is apples, and then September's apples, we're going to talk about it at the end of August with you, and then October will be pumpkins. We'll talk about that with you at the end of September. So sign up for that if you're interested. We're going to be continuing to share lots of interesting content, lesson ideas, and upcoming stuff with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And so please follow us on that social media if you haven't already. And with that, I'm going to hang around here for a little bit. If you've got questions for Hannah or I, we will answer those, and then take a break, get some lunch, and then we've got our commodity interns joining us at 1 o'clock. So we've got a session from 1 to 1:50, and then a session from 2 to 2:50. So please join us for that, and we will look forward to seeing you here in about an hour. All right, again, thank you so much for joining us here today, guys. We appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions come through. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Hannah, and we'll see you at 1 o'clock.
Thank you.